So I am at the cinema last night watching the new 28 Years Later movie, and I'm thinking, I can't wait to watch a zombie movie where there's no politics. And of course, the woke they've gotten to Danny Boyle. The woke have gotten to
Spreading
him.
through the population like a virus, like a pathogen, infecting everyone.
The woke mind virus, you could now say, is the thing that makes people zombies in the movie series 28 Days, 28 Weeks, 28 Years Later. Because what happens, and this isn't a spoiler, by the way, so don't worry, anyone. It's just a bit. Just relax. It's just a bit. What happens is they set an English flag on fire. Can you believe it? They set an English flag on fire, and what they're trying to say to us is that British lives don't matter, and Brexit was bad, and also something about COVID. That's crazy.
The St. George's Cross, the most sacred of all geometric and color arrangements known to man. I saw actually this week an England flag next to a Palestine flag hanging from the same house, and I was hooting and hollering. I was just like, I can, like, this is okay. I think this is. Abby pointed at the St. George's Cross and called it the football flag, and I was just like, you know what? In this context, I like that. Let's completely divorce the England flag from the
The Union
state,
Jack. Yeah.
and the all the football England supporters can be entirely, they can keep it. They'll be so happy, like they'll be so fucking excited. They can keep the St. George's Cross, but it only means football, and then we all agree we hate the cops, and that's it.
Well, at the football cross.
The football cross, exactly.
Yeah. Football cross.
Oh, it's Red Planet, and here we are, and here you are. Welcome, everybody, and we're going to start today in the same way that we start every show. What is the most base thing that you did this week, Tim?
Probably not too much. I would say I donated to a fundraiser that a friend of mine is putting on for like an animal welfare kind of like rescue thing. That's probably what I got this week. I don't know. Otherwise I've just been really busy with work. What about you, Soph?
Yeah, I had another hub shift. This is becoming my answer every week, but like it's my rolling thing until I do something more interesting. The hub shifts are always like full of activity. There's been a little bit of conflict recently, over like, I think it's the first time in the running of the hub where like there's conflict around how a hub user, who obviously, like, we're talking about people who are homeless typically. Some of them are drug users, some of them are mentally ill, some, like, by definition the hub is there for like over police populations. There's been a bit of conflict over like hub users who have somewhat difficult behavior, and it's a very challenging topic because obviously dealing with the most precarious people and trying to offer support and help and harm reduction to the most precarious people, you just never want to turn anyone away. But also, like, what if you have someone who comes in who spends like a lot of the time there talking shit about sex workers, for example, like another group who would use the hub, and there might even be people there who are there to talk about sex work at the time, right? And it's like, how do you manage this? Yeah, it's been a bit difficult, but like, I think it's just like kind of, I'd call it teething pains in terms of like just moving through stuff to make sure that everything's running well. My exciting news, I'm not sure if I already talked about this, but I'm going to be teaching cohort 4. So when I trained to be a volunteer, I was in cohort 3. There was like a somewhat secret cohort 3.5 of volunteers who got all the like woke school trainings because some people from Queen Mary University, some, I think, medical students wanted to get involved. And so like one of our organizers like went out there and did like a 3-day super intense like crash course on being woke. There were some great pictures from actually where they look like they're training the kids in an elite in an elite training camp, an elite training cell for being woke frontline soldiers.
Super soldiers, yeah. Antifa super
yeah,
soldiers.
but we're going to be back to the 8-week more chill sessions course style that I went through for cohort 4, and I'm going to be teaching about sex work and microcounseling and about abolition, which is fun to get involved with that because I'll be involved in the um how it's taught, not just like because I'm teaching it, but we're having discussions about how to like revise the material continually to make the best training possible for hub volunteers. So it's cool. I am a bit sick of like so much of my life being dictated, like my life and my work and organizing being dictated by my gender. But at the same time, there has been some useful stuff I've been able to contribute to do with transphobia, transmisogyny, and issues that trans people face systemically in the notes. And like, I think I'm adding other stuff too. Like, I don't just have being a trans woman to talk about, but it's still good to add that stuff in. Mule, what was the most base thing you did this week?
Well, I am still on my hiatus from organising, enjoying a summer where I am dealing with my health. I am trying to get back to doing content creation. I'm enjoying making content again, which is good. My health is getting loads better. I've done loads of dusting in my apartment this last, not just this weekend, but also the weekend previous. And it turns out that that's basically where I was falling down on. I'm the Asmongold of dust, if you will. Hopefully no one in our audience knows what that means, but I know that some of you will, and that's upsetting to me. But anyway,
Mule only wakes up each day when the room gets too clogged with dust and he starts to suffocate, and then his brain panics and wakes him up.
Yeah, literally, that's it. No, but it's honestly been genuinely ridiculous how like I dusted my bedroom, changed some curtains that were like pretty moldy, to be honest. They were pretty much covered in black mold, and I just got some new ones for like 30 quid, and changed them this weekend with my friend, and yeah, it's just made the absolute world of good. So I'm absolutely buzzing about that, and I'm feeling loads better, just generally in myself. So yeah, it's been self-care still, and yeah, I really don't think I've done anything based. I've just been online, but I was the person who was leading the way. Many people were saying this Mule is the most based Red Planet host. He's always doing stuff. And now,
I think you have many months that you could be not based for before either of us catch you up.
No. You're already way up there. So yeah, I'm happy to be taking a break anyway. It's all good. But speaking of based, we want to know what based things you have been doing. So we have a based viewer, Frazo, who has this week, very, very proud of this one. Frazo has been in our communities for a long time. Frazo says, I've finally gotten around to publishing this project I've been thinking of for a few months. A user style for Twitch that hides categories for games by and from BDS listed or otherwise Zionist game companies, developers, publishers, as well as streams and streamers in these categories. This is a link that you can get on Twitch if you want. Unfortunately, there isn't one for YouTube as far as we are aware. So Frazo, let us know when that has been made. I'm sure you're hard at work on that. They're definitely not hard work on that. Well, they might be. I don't know. I'm just speaking for them at the minute. But you could get that in the Twitch chat right there. You can also get it in the YouTube chat, even though it works just for Twitch. So check that out. I think the easiest way for me to communicate this to podcast listeners would be to say it is codeberg.org/Frazo, and I'll spell that for you. That's codeberg.org/FRESO. The links will also be in the notes of the show in the description down below on YouTube and also on Patreon as well. So thank you so much. We really appreciate that submission. Always love to hear from a based viewer. Please, we want to know what base things you've been doing. You can message us on Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok, or send an email to based@redplanetshow.com. Include your name and pronouns if you're cool with that, and we may shout it out in a later episode. So, on with the show. We've got a huge news show for you today. So let's get started with that. Sophie, talk to us about the ban on prescribed organization Palestine Action.
Absolutely. This has been an ongoing situation for about 3 weeks, maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago. Palestine Action activists broke into RAF base Brize Norton and spray painted some planes, which took them out of commission. They were going to actually, I'm not sure if the planes were themselves. The RAF is supporting the efforts in Palestine, and Palestine Action actionists decommissioned them by spray painting them. This prompted Yvette Cooper to list them as a prescribed org in the same category as Al Qaeda, ISIS. Who else? I don't think they're called the National Front anymore, but there's like Nazi orgs we mentioned before. Palestine Action were literally prescribed in the same vote as two neo-Nazi orgs. One of them called the Murder Maniac Club. So
like, okay, guys, what are we gonna call our club?
But it is now an equal level of offense in the UK for someone to say that they support a neo-Nazi org or Al Qaeda or Palestine Action, which is pretty fucked up. And to be clear, it's okay to say that because under the Terrorism Act, you are allowed to say you think a ban is stupid as long as you're not advocating for anyone else to support a prescribed group. So once again, to be clear, I'm not promoting Palestine Action or saying that anyone should support Palestine Action when I say this is a dangerous attack on freedom of speech in our country. We don't have the First Amendment like America does, but it is still important for us to be able to protest, for us to be able to say that we think something is wrong. And this is the first time that a direct action group has been prescribed as a terrorist organization in the UK. I think that it's worth pointing out some stuff there's some stuff that's in the founding premises of Red Planet, like stuff we've been saying since the very beginning about what's going to happen with the worsening climate crisis, with worsening global fascism. And obviously we didn't know things things with the Israeli occupation of Palestine were going to take the turn that they've taken since October 7th, 2023 at the time. But if we thought about the situation there, maybe that would have been fairly obvious that something like this, eventually this escalation might happen. But we've been saying that governments will try to more harshly criminalize. This is a pattern with authoritarianism. They've tried to more harshly criminalize forms of protest that everyone took for granted as being maybe they're technically breaking a law, but people agree that what they're doing is moral and it's for a moral cause, clearly, like with climate protest. And then the reaction that will definitely happen from there is, and this is just it's logical to say to say that this would happen. It's not it doesn't take any advocating, right? It's literally just if you give people a terrorism charge for spray painting a plane, or for, I don't know, if they applied it to Just Stop Oil, imagine they're getting terrorism charges for blocking the M25 with a banner, right? If people get terrorism charges for these sorts of things, then they know that everything above a certain level of protest, which is an A to B march where they aren't too loud and everything is agreed with the cops and no one kicks off at all, everything above this level will catch a terrorism charge. People who have already decided that they are going to get arrested and face charges for something they believe in are going to try to take action that is more radical, and that they believe has more of an impact in affecting and slowing down and stopping the machines that are killing children in this case. It's dangerous because it will literally drive people to do things that more people agree are terrorism. If I'm real about this one.
Yeah.
Now we have been covering Palestine Action and their activities on the show for a long time. We interviewed founder Huda Mori on the show, and like I don't see a world where they're going to start like attacking people. It's not the purpose or function of their group. But like this was spray painting on a plane, right? I'm just saying, like, this will probably drive people to do more serious sabotage, and probably to something bigger than a plane. I don't know. It's just like it just is a
Yeah, I mean,
stupid
it's
thing to
like,
do. Is my point I'm saying?
yeah, absolutely. It's like if you've, like if you know that you're going to go away for like, 2 to 5 years for spray painting a plane, and then, you may as well do something else at the same time. You may as well, like, well,
Exactly.
like if you're thinking about it, like if your primary goal isn't just to make a political statement, but it's to prevent to prevent more death in Palestine, or to
Yes,
to
exactly.
disable the kind of the machines of like disable the war machine in some way, then like if you're gonna go to jail for a couple years, like if you're in the headspace of someone that really is very set on actually making a change in this, in this Holocaust, then, what's the difference between doing something more extreme, like it's,
Literally,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, so
Mm-mm.
that's my point. I think it's fair to say Red Planet's official position is that the prescription of Palestine Action is a bad and wrong thing to do for a
Mm.
bunch of reasons. Um, and and in doing that, we are not encouraging anyone to support Palestine Action. To the news story itself, hundreds rallied outside courts when the prescription went through with signs like "We are all Palestine Action." 29 were arrested for holding anti-genocide placards. There have been protests where people are holding placards that read, quote, "I oppose genocide, I support Palestine Action." Since the prescription, more than 100 people around the UK have been arrested with, pending possible terror charges for holding these placards and expressing support for the group. Um, Tomorrow, as we're recording, July 21st, there will be a judicial review to challenge the ban. In the time, you know, between the prescription and tomorrow, like it's still catching people terror charges. It is unclear if the prosecution of any of these people who are expressing support for Palestine Action, like if any of those people are let off, whether this will have kind of legal effect on the prescription itself. It might, like, a lot of lawyers talk about, I've seen Joe Mo talking about this, like the term legal absurdities. Like lawyers need for the rules to get ironed out. And if it's like, if it something creates just something that doesn't make sense, this is, potentially a way for things to unravel. So like it would be legally absurd, for example, if Palestine Action is a prescribed terror group, the same as Al Qaeda, the Murder Maniac Club, neo Nazis, ISIS, but people are let off if they are arrested for supporting them. Um, it would be a bizarre exception. In the wake of the ban, and we've covered this before, but a new direct action group has emerged under the name Yvette Cooper, which is also the name of our fascist Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, who has banned Palestine Action. They have repeatedly posted alongside videos of their actions. If you want to ban Palestine Action, you'll have to prescribe Yvette Cooper too. It is currently, it's worth saying that there is no prescription on Yvette Cooper. It's completely okay to say, I support Yvette Cooper, and I hope Yvette Cooper succeeds at everything that Yvette Cooper attempts. I lastly want to touch on a video that went quite viral this week. I think a trans woman actually was protesting in Canterbury in Kent. She was wearing a keffiyeh, had a Palestine flag, had a sign that said "Free Gaza" and another sign that said "Israel is committing genocide." Now, nothing here expresses support for Palestine Action or even for direct action tactics against Israeli genocide, but the video shows two armed police officers threatening to arrest her and charge her with terrorism charges on the suspicion of supporting Palestine Action. if they really wanted to pursue this case, right? Like they could look at her social media, or they could raid her house or whatever, look for any tiny detail that could be argued in court that she supports this prescribed group. This is really, really dangerous. It shows the gulf between what the law is as written down and what policing does, right? Because if the police can threaten someone with terror charges, right, then that person probably will go home and stop. Like we were just talking about people who obviously will make the opposite decision in some cases, but a lot of people will just go home and stop, obviously. And when she was doing nothing that actually expressed support for Palestine Action explicitly, just supporting the same cause as them, well, yeah. So this is exactly as I and many other people expressed fear that this would be the case with the prescription. The police are using it as what you call a metonym, like a small part to refer to the whole, and saying that any support of Palestine is potentially, is reasonable grounds for suspicion that someone supports Palestine Action. There was also, I believe, someone either threatened with arrest or ejected from somewhere because they were wearing a shirt that said we need to take action for Palestine. I think that the shirt, to be clear, had the words Palestine and action in a different font and size. But it's interesting. People are engaging in a lot of acts of civil disobedience to try to see where the state is going to draw the line. I guess next week we'll have more to say about this because, as I say, the judicial review is tomorrow. And will they uphold it? They shouldn't. It's a terrible idea and links them to the most violent and unpopular outburst of the collapsing empire. That no one wants us to be associated with. But Mule, speaking of the violence of collapsing empire, what else has been going on our wacky little fun island this week? Is it maybe horrible Nazi shit? Is it possibly riots by racists against immigrants?
Yes, it is that. This is the Epping Hotel pogrom attempt. So since Thursday this week, there have been numerous violent protests, I think 2 or 3, organized by fascist groups outside a hotel housing migrants seeking asylum, waiting for their asylum claims to be processed in Epping, Essex, in the UK. The so-called protests were altogether organised around the far-right lie of asylum seekers being rapists and paedophiles, something that is being perpetuated and strengthened by, there was recently, this kind of flew under the radar for a lot of people, and it's a little frustrating. There was a Baroness Casey who also did the report into the Met Police. She's often the person who is essentially commissioned to do reports for the government on various public bodies that are, doing prosecutions. So it's justice kind of stuff. And she did the Met Police review where they said, oh yeah, the Met Police are overwhelmingly racist, misogynist, homophobic. She has done a review into the ethnicity of grooming gangs, which is, I went through the report on my stream, and there is really an overwhelming amount of bias in the report. I don't know exactly what the game is. It just kind of seems like ever since the Cass report, there are just unqualified reports being put through. I guess like the civil servant sectors of Parliament, where it's just like, oh yeah, okay, we did this report and it's definitely a report and it's definitely scientific, but it's of course designed to manufacture consent for public opinion. This grooming gang report is overwhelmingly, in my opinion, that, because the report only really focuses on the ethnicity of grooming gangs from 3 different jurisdictions of police in the UK. So there was Oxford, and Greater Manchester, for Rochdale, which is where one of the places. Oh, and in Oldham, sorry, where like there was 2 places there where there were like a few different grooming gangs of Asian men, global majority men, and also in, I think it was South Yorkshire or North Yorkshire, I can't remember exactly, but It's this concentration of an area of the UK that constitutes for less than 5% of its landmass, and the amount of crimes constitute for less than 1% of the amount of crimes that reported of a similar nature. And she is, specifically in the report highlighting, ethnicity. Like, it says at the start of the report, there is places where we have mentioned the ethnicity of the groups or the criminals involved are highlighted in this color, and it is so obvious that it is supposed to manufacture consent, because then any racist media can point to it and go, look, they did an official report, you can't do us for inciting terrorism and crimes against people. So I believe that has done a huge number on what was already a spiraling sort of public opinion on migrants, in terms of, people overwhelmingly not wanting to get involved in a conversation because they don't know enough about it. And of course, the people who are fascists are emboldened by this. And that is what we're seeing with things like the Epping Hotel pogrom attempt. So again, overwhelmingly demanding that migrants in the hotel be deported, with reason to believe that they are sex pests, sex criminals. There's also been more manufacturing of consent in the media this week about Afghan men, because there are I guess like 100 or so Afghans who served under the UK army in Afghanistan while the UK were there, who are being rehoused in the UK at the moment as part of an agreement with the UK that they would be supported after we withdrew from Afghanistan. And there has been so much about these Afghan men and, oh my God, Afghan men engage in child abuse and yada, 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 all this kind of business. So there's more and more and more of this stuff. It's, making the grounds, it's building the grounds for another white boy summer here in the UK, which is really good fun for everybody. There is, however, reason to believe that several of the fascist Brits who were at the protest have either served time for or are currently on probation for child sex abuse offences. Apparently, according to one user on Twitter who posted a thread of basically bust cards, or the equivalent of in the UK, essentially saying that there was about 16 in total who had essentially been alleged to have engaged in child sex abuse offences. But not much violence occurred on the day in Thursday until later on in the evening, when one worker at the hotel who was arriving for his shift, despite being British, was targeted due to his skin colour and assaulted. The violence continued on the second night and devolved into attacks against the police officers. Lol, let them fight. This Red Planet reporter says, where one fascist had his teeth knocked out by a riot shield, and Fash was seen climbing over police vans and vandalising them. So far, only a few people have been arrested for the violence, compared to the absurd numbers of Palestine Action supporters who have been arrested for holding signs, as we previously reported on. And yeah, it is just an indicator of the ways in which policing in this country serves to create an environment for Fortress Europe. As you were saying earlier, Sophie, Fortress Europe is something that is having to be enforced now that the leader of the empire, the leader of the walled world, America, is in such decline. It's abandoning its fellow imperial states by not sort of giving them good trade deals with this new tariff stuff that's going on, making loads and loads of demands for defense spending while not actually supporting them monetarily. And with Macron's visit to the UK, which was, I believe it was this week, it could have been the week before, but I can't remember, but there were mentions of a Entente Cordiale, which was the agreement with France and England, France and the UK, at the start of the 20th century, which was to try and prevent wars from happening in Europe. It was kind of the beginning of the European Union. Obviously, that was at a time when the USA was not involved in Europe, really. It was more of an isolationist, project in terms of the grand scheme of things. But it kind of has echoes of that, where Macron was talking with Starmer and, saying that, yeah, we are unifying as two nations, And I think that is something to do with a possible reckoning that is coming for states in Europe in terms of the declining empire. So it's more and more examples of that. And again, to sort of, I guess, compound this collapsing of the empire, tell us about what's going on with the imperial boomerang over there in the States, Tim.
Yeah, I mean the boomerang is boomerang, right? So this happened. This kicked off just the other week, but it's been a little while since we did stream. So Trump has built Alligator Alcatraz, a concentration camp for detained immigrants. It's a $450 million death trap built in just 8 days. To, I'm sure, like rigorous building codes and everything like that. No, so this is literally a tent and cage facility in the Everglades. It's designed to hold about 3,000 migrants in flood-prone, hurricane-vulnerable conditions. And state lawmakers, including one 13-year legislator, were denied entry, suggesting that human rights abuses are being hidden in the facility. Florida law gives legislators the authority to make unannounced visits to state-run facilities to inspect conditions and check on the well-being of the people inside. I've served in this legislature for 13 years, and this has never happened. States Senator Chevron Jones posted on X. Trump and DeSantis donors, like CDR companies, are making millions of dollars off the medical services and construction of this facility. The immigrants are in a facility that is very inaccessible to lawyers, to family members, to oversight. Renata Bozzetto, deputy director of the Florida Immigrant Commission, told the Washington Post in an article published 2 Saturdays ago. So the location being so remote and isolated is a problem. Being an environmentally fragile ecosystem is a problem. Being constructed with temporary materials will be catastrophic in case of a hurricane. So it's like this wild thing where they've built this facility that is like they made it to hold a whole bunch of people really fast without any kind of long-term like sustainability as like an actual like detention center, which a lot of people have pointed out is like what's the plan here? Like, are they planning on holding them here in terrible facilities for a long time, or are they planning on using this as like a stop-off point towards sending them other places or whatever like that? But when they initially did the like the cages on the border, they initially said that they were like, oh, these will be just temporary, we're going to put these people here while we move them into other facilities. And then we saw like children being held there for like just like huge amounts of time unaccompanied and all this kind of stuff. So regardless of the like whatever excuses, like I'm sure we'll probably see people put in these conditions for a lot longer than what they're promising. So yeah, the facility is in a high velocity hurricane zone where building code requires that buildings have a wind resistant design. Florida's emergency management director, Kevin Guthrie, told the Washington Post that the structures are rated for winds traveling 110 miles an hour. But for reference, top speeds of last year's Hurricane Milton reached 180 miles per hour. So, that's like 70 miles per hour wind is like a huge difference. And there are also significant health risks from the environment. Being in the Everglades, this is like a swampy, like a very, and it's like not just that it's like, a swamp ecosystem or whatever, but it is like intentionally very remote. Like it's in the middle of nowhere for a reason. So, yeah, the risk of mosquito-borne disease at the site is significant, according to Derlin Fish, Professor Emeritus of Epidemiology at Yale University School of Public Health, in the same article for the Washington Post. So, mosquitoes in the Everglades can cause neurological damage like encephalitis, which can be life-threatening. And so, yeah, um, this is tents and cages, you know? Uh, so not exactly mosquito proof, you know? So the facility is surrounded on three sides by the homes of Miccosukee and Seminole people, including their ceremonial sites. It's a place where we come for healing, where we come to pray, Betty Osceola, a member of the Everglades Advisory Board and the Miccosukee tribe, told NBC News. These lands are not empty stretches of wilderness, nor are they merely backdrops to policy decisions. They are living, breathing homelands, deeply tied to the cultural, spiritual, and historical identity of Miccosukee and Florida Seminole people, said Louis J. Johnson, principal chief of the Seminole Nation of Oklahoma. So yeah, there's like, I feel like you could throw a dart at a board of all the reasons why this is a terrible, terrible thing. And yeah, and it, you know, it's just like there's no reason why they had to build this. There's no you know, like there's it's like they're scaling up these detention facilities with the intention of detaining more people. You know, it's like
Yeah.
they're like that's a plan. It's not like they're like, oh man, we're really in crisis, we need somewhere to, you know, put prisoners or whatever. They're like, no, we need more places to put prisoners because we are planning on imprisoning more people, you know.
And
Which
more
is,
and more explicitly like killing, like they're
yeah.
being more, you know, not necessarily Trump's staff, but not necessarily not them, but like high ups in the MAGA movement are being really clear that what the meaning of this plan here is, like
Like this is a
like
concentration camp, yeah.
yeah, everything you're saying about the horrible conditions is it's because like the purpose here is to let people die in all these different
Mm,
ways. And then if
yeah.
that's not fast enough, doubtless like they will want to ramp it up to like killing people in, you know,
Mm,
in things directly reminiscent of the Holocaust. I this is the intention that a ton of these people are stating. I just wanted to say, like, it's really striking to me the specific violence of using the ecosystem in this way and the dangers of being in this kind of place if you are imprisoned there as a way to kill these people. Like, what a specific violence that is on like Seminole people, on like, you know, indigenous people in the area when they have like land that's been taken from them by people who see it as a commodity. It's built this horrifying society that's done genocide against their people. And now, like, the land is being used as, like, this is a place full of alligators and mosquitoes and terrible
mm,
conditions. So, obviously, no one would ever want to be here. It's a deadly, evil, toxic place. And it's like, it's the, 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 the concentration camp that's deadly and evil and toxic, and the US government that's deadly and evil and
yeah.
toxic, but the, you know, the ecosystem itself is being used as a weapon. That's so
Mm,
horrifying.
yeah, yeah. And it's almost like that they've um created the situations for things like disease to thrive there, as opposed to just like, you know, like if this is an ecosystem that is home not just to, you know, like all these different creatures, but to the different indigenous groups and stuff like that. And it's like obviously to them this is not a hostile ecosystem, but they are creating a hostile area there, you know, like yeah, it's it's pretty, like, you know, like it's just like it's kind of demonic. It's very like uniquely Americanly evil, you know.
Also important to remember that they are, if they deport people from this place because they are like, oh, it's too full, we need to
Mm,
move some of these people out of here
yeah.
in order for other people to get here. They will only end up going, you know, they're not going to go to their, if they are a
No.
migrant, their country of origin. They very well may end up in Seacot. And if you haven't seen any footage of the facility at Seacot, the prison at Seacot, I highly encourage you to go and look at it, because I guarantee you will take one look at it and say this place needs to be destroyed.
Yeah.
There just simply cannot be a place like this that exists in the world. And it's crazy because the USA has managed to recreate some of what is happening at CCOT in terms of the inability for anyone to sort of have any kind of human need met,
Mm.
because that's a huge thing at CCOT. You know, people all crammed in together, they can't sleep and stuff like this. And you know, the alligator Alcatraz, or alligator Auschwitz, as people are calling it, is sort of similar in the regard in that it floods all the time. I've heard reports this week of people having to drink toilet water to survive. Yeah, it's that kind of level of it. They're trying to recreate CCOT, but you know, if it gets too much and they need to deport more people, they'll just send them to CCOT. They'll send them to another place that's just as evil.
And I feel like a lot of the time, you know, like you get these kind of places that then end up overflowing, and then that the overflowing of them, which is like, you know, it appears to be very engineered, is used as justification for more extreme things. It's like, oh well, we got to do something. Well, we can't, you know, like what are we going to do? And you know, and that generally, you know, only goes to more kind of like either like, you know, sending them to like El Salvador, or you know, prison over there, or to, you know, literally just being like, well, we're just going to start executing these people, you know.
I have two thoughts on this. One is like the concentration Alligator Alcatraz being built in like a week or whatever it was. Like a lot of people have been pointing out with the floods in Texas, like, you know, that like 60 like Christian schoolgirls on a like Texan Christian schoolgirls on a camp got like washed away in this flood and are presumably dead. Some number of people's bodies have been found. And you know, the Trump's government doesn't give the slightest fuck. And this should be the people, if they care about anyone, this should be the people they care about. But like, they care about destroying the lives of the people they hate far more than they could ever care about building anything that like could possibly be worth preserving, which is just horrible. But I was gonna say, like, I think one thing that's an indicator in CCOT and the fact that ICE has like stopped tracking like how many trans people are like have been taken and are in their custody speaks to the same thing, right? Which is just like the intention with this population is for them to just disappear, to just be gone, to just be erased, to lose all records of them. Like any remembrance of these people will be done by people who knew them and knew that they were taken by ICE. And like, I think we are looking at like the unfurling of it, you know, a second genocide in real time that's going to be like documented all over social media alongside Israel's one, right? Because like they are treating this population as already disappeared. Like they're treating them as you're never going to know what happened to these people because we're not even keeping records on them. We're not installing safety for treating them as a population that we have custody of that we have care of in any way. It's so clearly, just disposing of them.
Yeah, cool. So it's all around just like a very horrific I would say like this is like a different escalation. A different kind of escalation from America on you know, like their war on, you know, illegal immigrants, as they're saying. It's like we were saying, the imperial boomerang, you know, it's like the things that have been going abroad are coming back home, and you know, like I think it's only a matter of time before this isn't just like illegal immigrants, you know. It's going to be I wouldn't be surprised if this just kind of becomes the norm for the American prison industrial complex in some manner.
Like people are already pointing out a lot of stuff that has been as the phrase goes battle tested on Palestinians that is now being used against the American population, like police drones, like that's the thing that was absolutely Israeli weapons industry. Finding people in raids, using like body heat mapping, like as a military police technology. This was like given from the Israelis to ICE. Apparently, there's something that's like able to, if they have someone and they have their phone that they can just like plug into the phone and just basically like get all of its contents. This is something that is like Israeli technology that's been given over to like American police. Yeah, I mean, as I said in my video, we must stop them when the just after October 7th, when the genocide in Gaza began, like genocide is to states and to political projects a political tool. As horrible as it is to say that, because it's such an atrocity and such an incomprehensibly inhuman thing to witness. Like it is a tool to them of like achieving a political goal. And I think something that's really deeply sickening, like really like shows the fucking Patrick Bateman level of nothing behind the eyes that like Democrat supporters of Israel are, is that like this whole entire time with Trump, their problem with him has been that he's stupid, that his political project isn't like seemly and respectable, and that it's stupid and just chasing petty goals. And that stuff is insulting. Like it sucks that on top of all the horrors that his regime is doing, that it is so dumb. But like they think that there is a respectable world of liberal politics in which the Israeli genocide is okay. And that's just so deeply chilling.
Yeah. So pretty horrific shit already coming out from there, but we'll stay tuned to that and see how things develop. But so why don't you let us know what's happening over in the UK with the anti-trans stuff at the moment?
Yeah, sure thing. So there was, I'm gonna have to, unfortunately, the start of this segment is, I'll get to some more practical stuff I've been writing actually, so that'll be better. But the start of the segment is unfortunately about some misinformation that's been spreading around in like trans social media. And this happens. And I think the more we can address this issue and talk about the fact that we do this on social media, like as a population on social media, we sometimes share stuff around and it goes super viral that is really, really scary headlines about plans that like super fact politicians have that they would like to implement, but they haven't implemented and they're not implementing, at least right now. And the thing is, like, if you want to help your friend and you hear that your friend has been shot in the face, you will stop trying to get them medical attention when they actually might desperately need it. So there has been a claim going around on social media, shared by a lot of trans people and trans allies, that the RSE bill, which is Relationship and Sex Education bill, which is issuing guidance and making reforms to how relationships and sex education is taught in schools, is going to include a blanket ban on any mention of gender identity or anything that encourages children to question their gender identity, which was something that was proposed by the Tory government in May last year, I believe, but is not actually what is going on right now. So going back to my analogy, right? If your friend is in mortal danger, like, or is getting attacked, like, and you want to get the medical help, reporting that it's already over and they're dead, which, in one sense you could say this is what it would be, but there's more to do outside, beyond just like electoral politics and what the government says that can be done, right? Obviously, like, I wouldn't say that kind of ban would be akin to us all just being dead, right? But I just the actual guidance does have one mention of gender identity, and it says that children must not, like it says, must not be taught as a fact that they all have a gender identity. And like that is still the Labour government capitulating to anti-trans bullshit, right? Because children do all have a gender identity. Everyone who's ever lived has had a gender identity, right? If they were being taught a feminist curriculum, they would be taught a curriculum that would tell them that everyone has a gender identity, and it is being like shaped around which gender they are assigned at birth, and that we live inside of a patriarchy that then tells people born with penises that they are a boy and then a man, which makes them more powerful and means that their feelings should be listened to more. And if they're born with a vagina, that makes them a girl and then a woman, which makes them a kind of property that exists for the comfort and pleasure and excitement and care and reproduction and reassurance and confidence of the other sex, right? Like, and that would be a feminist way to teach kids, which would like help kids to grow up in a more gender equal world and help to actually combat the patriarchy. But the first thing you would have to teach them is that they have a gender identity, though. Like literal page 1 of like Simone de Beauvoir is literally like, women aren't born, you become a woman.
Yeah, the idea of a gender, like, as when the concept of gender identity was first observed, it's like, it's not a thing that was like, we've created this thing, like we've added this extra option to the character creator. It's like we are observed, like it was made as like an observation of things, like this is a thing that socially that humans do. This is an observed phenomenon, as opposed to like a thing that was created. It's kind of like like all of like the stuff about Marx not like inventing class conflict, but being like
doing
the words to
experiments
talk
with
about
capital
it.
And
Yeah.
exactly.
It's like he just invented the language to talk about it, and that's what and that's what happened with like gender identity. People go like, oh, I don't remember that when I was a kid. It's like, well, because you didn't have the language to talk about it, that didn't mean it didn't happen.
It's like the let him sweep thing with like, we used to have like a quirky cousin and now we have an autistic cousin, but like a lot more violent. Like obviously there still has been a lot of violence that's been done to autistic people, even just based on being quirky. There are still nasty words that I got called as a kid that if I had been able to say, hey, I'm autistic, and that's the thing, I don't think they would have stopped saying those words. But like the let him sweep or I have a quirky cousin alternative for trans people is immense violence. And like the shift from that to treating us like people is for some people too jarring of a shift. So for one example of such a person, let's talk about some turf shit that happened. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm going to back up a second. There's one more thing I want to say about the guidance before we move on, probably to a good example of such a person, with some stuff that happened at Hampstead Heath Ladies Pond. But there's one more thing in the guidance, which is that they are trying to, they say, teach kids stuff that will help to combat Andrew Tate incel culture, because they're really worried about how much it's going around on social media, which is completely fair. Like it genuinely is a massive fucking epidemic of like, kids now are like using words like Sigma, like as part of their everyday vocabulary, and like clips of Andrew Tate are shared around all the time. And like, this guy is a rapist, not just in the sense that he has raped a lot of women and confessed to it and like brags about it, but in the sense that he like believes in it as an ideology. Like that's his politics as rapist. Like that guy thinks that like men dominating women is the good and right way of the world. It's horrifying that he has had the influence that he's had. And it is good to try and combat his influence. And the best way you could do that is by teaching a feminist agenda in schools so that kids would understand, So the approach they're taking is just such a kind of embarrassing, out of touch. I don't even know the what would be the best way to describe this, but like what they are doing is that they plan to teach kids that incel shit exists and it's bad. And I'm just like, if you taught
how do you
kids
do that?
what was
like
wrong with how men treat women in everyday life, they would see that incel shit is like something you gotta fucking light on fire and stamp on until it stops moving. Like that's the gut feeling they would get, because that's the gut feeling that like women and men who understand feminism have when they see that shit, right? And that's the reaction we should have. But this is the same country where they've just prescribed Palestine Action for opposing a genocide, and the same country where they've talked about like I don't know, like trying to track down the leaders of terrorist Antifa groups. It's so, I don't know.
I feel like it's like what you were saying. It's this same thing where it's like, okay, so we're gonna teach kids incel Andrew Tate shit bad, which is like, how will you do that without actually, without being woke? How are you gonna do that unwokely? And our producer Conrad has said that he was taught that Nazis were bad in school, but didn't actually get told why. And it's the same kind of thing. And now we have all these like fucking American Nazis being like,
Yeah.
like because they
Yeah.
don't know. No one ever told them. And it's like, okay,
No,
so
I
we're
saw
gonna
a reel of a guy just the other day, and he was like, he was saying, sorry to
or the
stereotype,
Fox
but this
News
is
guys.
true. He was sitting on a tractor, and he
Oh
was
no.
saying, I've just heard translated speeches of Hitler for the first time, and we were always taught that his stuff was bad, but I'm hearing it, and he's talking about like dignity and
Yeah.
morality and like our country being strong and a future for our kids, and
Mm.
that's all good stuff that I like, and
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
just like this
You see
you
the
should have
Fox
been
News
teaching
guy
people.
talking about it?
Yeah, what was this?
The Fox News guy saying that Nazi is like the N word for white people, and that he's like literally just saying he's like, we like, we got to get comfortable. Yeah, Greg Gutfeld, Conrad said it's like
It's a
it's
word that
horrific because
begins
he's
with N that a lot
yeah,
of
yeah,
white
yeah. But he's
people
like actually saying he's like, they call us this, but we should embrace it, sort of thing. And it's like
fucking
this kind of
Oh,
hell.
thing.
that's
And
interesting.
Rocking
yeah, yeah,
up to the
which is
honky club, like, what up, my Nazis?
yeah, exactly. Like he's literally saying shit like that. But yeah, like that is like so almost bang on exactly what he was saying. But yeah, so I think
Okay.
like it's the same thing. It's like you teach children Andrew Tate bad, don't be an incel, and they'll just find other ways to like,
No, yeah,
It's
exactly.
wild because
You have to
Andrew,
teach kids like an educational rubric that they'll come to the conclusion for themselves that Nazis do not deserve human
yeah,
rights. They need
it's
yeah,
to come
wild.
to the conclusion for themselves that fascists aren't people, and that the only reaction to a fascist you can have is to kill them immediately.
Andrew
mm,
Tate, Andrew Tate specifically talks about how trans women aren't women and just various transphobic talking points. Like this is not something that he does not comment on. And
mm,
so if you are brought up in a society where that kind of thing is so popular in the media, it is overwhelmingly something that you are just going to learn about. And then at school, you learn, oh, this one guy is really bad. And then your friend, like, shows you a video of him saying, like, trans women aren't women, trans men aren't men, or whatever. And you go, oh, that's crazy. Like, they're trying to silence him. That's state propaganda.
yeah.
And you're just playing into his game with that shit. There's going to be nothing good that comes of this.
Well, and I think it also ties with like the Nazi stuff, like people go like, okay, so Andrew Tate was bad, but we're not going to explain why. So it's like seems like because he's just an asshole. And then you will see that those same behaviors will manifest, but like in a way where people are like, not an asshole about it. And they'll be like, oh, this is fine. So it's like the American guy sitting on the tractor, he's thinking like, Hitler was bad because he started rounding up all the Jews in concentration camps, which is bad. He was an asshole, but like, this guy on the tractor still believes all the exact same things. He just knows. Well, you don't
Yeah.
do it like that because then you're an asshole. Like
Yeah.
it's
Which, like, I think brings us to something really core about, and I don't know if we really talked about this because we just generally don't go in for electoral politics all that much. But something really core about Starmerism, or like the lack of a cohesive Starmerism, like the fact that he didn't like campaign on any ideology and has been trying so hard to have no ideology the whole time. And he very clearly does. Like when I said earlier that like Yvette Cooper is a fascist as the Home Secretary. It's in the exact same sense that like police are all fucking fascists because their existence in a system is a systematically fascist one. Like the purpose of the system is what it does, and what it does is brutalize the poor, the like people of color, communities of color, sex workers, queer people, homeless people, the mentally ill, and in the same way, like this action by Yvette Cooper, like, it could be, you can give a very reasonable sounding justification for, oh, well, this direct action group broke into an RAF base. And that has to do with national security, because we have to be able to defend ourselves. Because what if we can't defend ourselves? What if all of our military equipment is sabotaged by activists? Well, fucking what if, babe? Like, what if the next Bible of the year 5000 tells the story of the great empires of Europe, and how when the wars came, all their fucking militaries were disabled because the people in those countries found the actions of those militaries so deeply sickening that they had to break into RAF bases and destroy the machines that were killing children? What if? Maybe that would be a judgment of the ruling class of those countries and not of the people and the working class of those countries. Maybe morally, the working class would be exonerated by history if that were allowed to happen. And then they would be able to be free of the vile slander of the name of nations that is done to them by grouping us in with the actions of the working class. That's maybe what would happen. Anyway, fucking Starmer is just thinks he's playing the politics machine, playing the politics game just right according to all of the rules. And so, we need to be careful because there's a lot of debate around trans issues. So don't teach kids that they have a gender identity, because that's still being debated. We don't know if kids have a gender identity yet. But also teach them that incels do exist. Trans people maybe exist, maybe. Incels do exist, and incels are bad. So if you see incels saying anything you agree with, then report it to the police, I guess.
Forensic politics.
So, two more things to talk about. One more is just to do with the everyday impact on people's lives. I want to read a little bit from an article by Jemana Yunus. I found this through Sisters Uncut socials. This is in the London Review of Books, and is an article about something that happened at the Hampstead Heath Ladies Pond. I'm going to read some excerpts. It was 27 degrees in London on Friday, 20th of June, and I was looking forward to cooling off with a swim at the Hampstead Heath Ladies Pond. The first time I visited the pond, I felt as if I'd walked into a Garden of Eden. A breeze rippled through the foliage that obscured the upper meadow from outside eyes. Lily pads floated on the water. Women, alone with a book or in groups, were dotted around, lounging in the sun or shade. And then, where is it? You shouldn't be here. This is a women's space. You're a man. These are screams from a, quote, middle-aged woman shouting at a trans woman. A multitude of voices rose up immediately in protest. Once I got over my initial shock, I joined them. The aggressor continued shouting. The woman who was being verbally abused stared straight back and replied, I am a woman. The other woman shouted that she wasn't and that she can tell. Quote, would you like to check? Asked the woman being attacked. As she walked away for her swim, I went to report the incident. I was shaking. Other women also came to report it, and they said they were trembling too. Our previously relaxed bodies now on high alert. I felt memory resurfaced of all the times when, growing up as a Muslim wearing hijab, I had racist abuse shouted at me in the street, or the occasion when a middle-aged woman turned on me in a bookshop cafe to start a tirade against your kind. I was 12. The staff at the pond said this wasn't the first time that the woman we were complaining about had done this. She was part of a group who would break the rules by bringing amplified music and chairs. Unfortunately, they are siren queens, so I can't actually complain. And would generally boss people around and try to police the meadow. They have apparently been emboldened by the Equality and Human Rights Commission's anti-trans interim update on the practical implications of the UK Supreme Court judgment. One of the things that the aggressor shouted repeatedly was, it's the law. So the staff basically asked this woman to leave. They have no powers to enforce it. I'm just going to say, to cis allies who might, be watching this, who are aware of this kind of situation and want to do what they can in future to stop it. If the staff can't make that woman leave for making it dangerous and unsafe and uncomfortable for the trans woman, they can't make you leave for making it an unsafe space for that turf. They can't. If the one applies, then the other applies. So all it means if the staff can't make that bigot leave is that it's up to you, basically. Which I understand is an intense undertaking, and I'm not asking lightly. I'm just saying that like it just means that it falls to you, and also that like you can't face repercussions for doing
Yeah.
it. Um,
There's
yeah,
one thing that I always remember. I I can't remember where I was doing somewhere years ago, doing like some kind of like, I don't know, some training thing for whatever job I was doing at the time, and we watched this like presentation about like the power of like crowds and things like that. And so if one person is like by themselves doing something, a lot of, like people will just stand around. There's like that whole bystander effect thing, but it's usually like the second person that kind of decides which side the crowd will be on. So, so if you see like a trans person in public being picked on by a turf, you want to be the second person that backs up the trans person before, the second bigot arrives, and,
yes, exactly, spot
that kind
on.
of thing. Um,
Yeah.
and I think even being aware of that, like knowing that, having it in your brain will help, like kind of helps you, because then when you're in that situation, like a lot of people will be just like, oh, I'm sure it's nothing, I'll just carry on or whatever like that. But then, if you have that little bit of programming in your brain that's like you want to be the second person, I think that kind of breaks through that kind of like awkward, I don't want to do anything. So if you do see like an injustice happening, it's like, be that second person, because when the second person arrives, other people will see that, and it's like you've kind of like snapped people out of it a little bit, and
Mm,
then
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's essential. I think like I've been talking a little bit for a little while about like bystander intervention training,
Mm.
because I've done it. I've done it like a couple of times now actually, and it's fairly straightforward. Like there are a bunch of really really simple things for you to do to be like techniques for you to know. But the moreover thing is just like if you do a training, you get to role play a little bit, and you just
Yeah,
practice being ready to intervene and put yourself
yeah,
between
yeah.
a person and a cop in the case of the training that we were doing with Cop Watch, or a person and a bigot, as it can be. But yeah, this I think like leads to some writing I've been doing. I just finished an essay I put up on Patreon. It's called "They Said on TV You Aren't a Person Anymore." It's going to be out on YouTube in a few weeks. I got to finish a piece of writing about Israel first, but like it's about the organizing that we can do in the trans community to organize towards liberation, with these like anti-trans attacks going on. I think it's really important for us to understand that they will not succeed to erase us, to wipe us out. Like the cat is so far out of the bag in terms of history, knowing now that trans people exist, that trans men are men and trans women are women, and there
Mm.
are a bunch of bigoted fascist, like patriarchal fascists trying to suppress this truth. Like this will be the most trivial thing for historians to document. Like
Yeah,
Fox News has now spent over a decade yelling about us. It's too late. Like they can no longer tick it, like turn time back, even if they were to uh, somehow organize to kill every living trans person right now. Um, so yeah, so in the meantime, it's just about us keeping ourselves as safe as possible, and that's really all there is to it. Um, and then from there, finding a democratic voice. Now, I've talked about assemblies on this show a whole bunch, so I won't go massively back into assemblies because I think that uh, well, I mean, we have literally like when I came back from hiatus, I think it was the first episode we did, so people can just go back. Maybe Conrad could put the link to the episode in the show notes for like the notes for this episode. But like we did an episode on assemblies talking about how it would work, and I basically think that trans people need assemblies. Like that's one of the strongest things think we need here is just like there are so many cis allies. Look, I'm on screen with two cis allies right now. Like this there are so many cis allies who like are super ready to do something, but literally we are not telling them what it is they can do. And like we have to get in a room, talk about what our issues are, and identify what solutions we think could work, and then start to try to do them. And we will suddenly find ourselves with an enormous like volunteer labor force of people who literally want to make trans people's lives better,
yeah,
and either want to volunteer time if they have it or money if they don't, right? Like they literally, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm a huge proponent of assemblies. I have public writing about it. We have we have an episode about it. Check all those out. But I want to talk a little bit about like harm reduction, which I think we'll probably do an episode soon about harm reduction organizing as well, and or about like Sarah Harpy's essay on the dolls. Now, I think I've mentioned both of these plenty before on the show, but the sentiment that's been going around on the dolls about like in the most literal sense, people have been saying like give trans women like weapons, like make it more normal for trans women to be carrying in the context of America, where like gun ownership is legal and quite popular, so that if they are attacked, they can defend themselves. Sarah Harpy points out that like in the cases like CC McDonald or Jaya Cruz, like trans women of color, they did defend themselves from bigoted attackers who were calling them slurs, who were in some instances like saying I'm gonna kill you, and like making like serious moves to do that. They defended themselves and got sent to a men's prison, right? Got convicted and sent to a men's prison, which like Harpy concludes there is therefore no legal and safe way for trans women of color to defend themselves from bigoted violence in the US, right? That's a reasonable conclusion. Yeah. And so like
and it's like it's wild. There's I mean, this is all over the place. Like I've looked at prison statistics for incarcerated women before incarcerated trans women in New Zealand, because Maori women are like disproportionately incarcerated,
the
like,
most imprisoned population.
I'm
right?
not sure.
Yeah.
Like the last statistic I saw on it was they were the most, and the trans women in particular, it's either it's basically either like something related to like being like sexually assaulted and then like fighting back, or like something that is like a result of like homelessness or drug abuse or something like that.
Yep.
Like it's very like, and it's kind of like all of these things are like crimes that are a like a result of being alienated by society, right? And it's kind of like there's no
Exactly.
it's not just like the defense from like the bigot on the street that wants to kick off, but the defense from like society itself. Like it's, and that's and that's in New Zealand as well, like that's not like in like fucking red state America or anything like that.
No, exactly. I think that's why Sarah Harpy goes next to say like on the dolls therefore has to mean create a situation where trans women are able to fight back, are able to protest, are able to leave abusive relationships, are able to not be homeless, not be doing sex work, like either be sober or be like take drugs in a safe environment like other people have access to, like all these things. Like it's arming. We have to understand like arming as a broader and in some cases kind of metaphorical, like arming with safety, resources, information, ability. It means giving agency to, and I think that's super important. I wrote a whole piece on it called "Arm the Dolls," but what does it all mean? Like unpacking it into like organizing specific terms. And one of the things I was going to say when we're talking about bystander training is like one of the things I said there is that being in community with cis people and being seen around every day and talking to people, and being basically seen as a human being is one of the biggest steps we can make to build like our safety in society. And this is it's something I say with not a small amount of bitterness, right? When I'm saying like the things we can do to feel to be safer materially is be seen by cis people as human beings. It's not actually a small task, but like for some of us, it genuinely is easier. Like I'm a white trans woman. I am capable of sounding very posh and like fitting in with people who love to think of themselves as the like respectable suburbanites in London, as much as with like various different groups of people, and be seen as human by them. And there are going to be some like early transition trans women, some homeless trans women, some trans women of color who like naturally have a disadvantage at being seen as a human being by those people. And if it's me under attack from a bigot, like where am I, right? Like on my street here, I know loads of my neighbors. In the local cafe, I know the owners. We've been friends for years. Am I at the harm reduction hub? All the people there are trained in bystander intervention training. Like all the places I would be safe. But my hope is that if people in my life see me as a person, right, then it can help to make a difference if they see a different trans woman being attacked by a bigot, and they don't just, as Tim's saying, like they can become the second person and turn the situation against the bigot. But there's a lot of other stuff besides, right? And I think that like it's really important that we as trans people balance the need to have safe spaces with the desire to secede from society and just make a complete underground and like hide, because there is a huge separatist impulse, I think, in trans women specifically, because trans women are treated like such shit by so much of society, including sometimes by other trans women and the queer community broadly, right? Like this happens, and then the dolls want to make like Doll Island and just like never leave and only ever see other trans women. And we have to balance this, like maintaining those spaces while also being integrated into like community around us with cis people so that they see us. And moreover, like making cis spaces those safe spaces for us. And I know safe spaces is such a played out term that's been like mocked endlessly because of the way that people will tend to conflate like their feelings with like legitimate threat or whatever, and be like, I need this to be a safe space. So like, don't mention alcohol because I have a friend who's sober or whatever. Like this is, but like genuinely, we need to make cis spaces into like safe spaces for trans people by getting like, if I'm thinking about like the owner of the cafe that I know, it would be trivial to get them to like commit to, like kicking someone out if they are being a transphobe. Like I kind of haven't because I figured that they would already, like we're friends. I would be shocked to see it go the other way. But like getting them to put up signage that say like, anyway, so that all is the on the doll stuff. The other thing I was going to talk about was harm reduction. So the kind of organizing I've been doing with or like the volunteering that I've been doing with the harm reduction hub, like I can't say enough that I think there should be more harm reduction hubs, like more spaces where like resources and education and non-judgmental advice is available to over-policed populations. Like I think that's so vitally important. But I think that we can take this kind of model and apply it to trans people as well. Like there's a lot of overlap where like the stuff that you would want to do harm reduction for anyway, like drug use would benefit trans people because like a lot of like what are considered trans spaces are actually just like club nights or whatever. But there's also there are some like trans specific things like DIY HRT would be a good example. How people can like successfully navigate medical and legal systems while reducing harm. I think that this is important too. I guess hopefully we can talk about it more when we do an episode to do with harm reduction. I'll like touch on trans people as an example there. But yeah, there's some of my organizing things, and I'll have the video out in a few weeks' time. Mule, do you want to tell us about Trump's attack on American media?
Yeah, so American media, not really. It should be clarified here that this is public funded, so public broadcasts is the current source of Trump's. I am talking about all sorts of media. However, yeah, I think the main crux of it is particularly public funded broadcasting. But yeah, so this is in relation to the House of Representatives passing a $9 billion funding cut to public media, not just public media, but also some foreign aid stuff in there, although the foreign aid was brought back a little bit. There were some amendments made to that to say that some foreign aid would still go to HIV prevention efforts, something that has been barely clawed back, but not without heavy criticism from everybody around of the Democrats not really doing enough to fight against the bill in general. But it was clawed back by the Democrats. One representative, Aaron Bean, says, quote, "We are taking one small step to cut wasteful spending, but one giant leap towards fiscal sanity," unquote. Fiscal sanity here referring to the American version of austerity, that is essentially not necessarily taking money. Well, no, because a lot of it was taking money from American individuals, especially people on Medicaid, especially people on welfare. But also it is a huge, just on steroids version of the austerity that was brought into the UK. And now one of the biggest things that's going to suffer is public broadcast. So Kate Riley, who is the CEO of a group called America's Public Television Stations, said that they were, quote, "devastated the Senate voted to eliminate federal funding to local public television stations throughout this country that provide essential life-saving public safety services, proven educational services, and community connections to their communities every day for free," end quote. And the head of native public media, Loris Taylor, called the Senate's decision, quote, "deeply troubling," end quote. Taylor, who heads a network of 57 native radio stations and 4 T stations, privately implored the South Dakota Republican Senator Mike Rounds to reject the package, the New York Times reported on Wednesday. Essentially, there were some disagreements as the vote was delayed for a long time, and they were mostly to do with government transparency around the Epstein files, the Epstein list, the Epstein files, whatever you want to call them.
Files that don't exist, and Trump isn't in them, even though they don't exist. But also they do exist, but they're fake, but they don't exist.
That's right.
Obama wrote them, crucially.
Yes. To satisfy the Epstein-related concerns without holding up the funding cuts, Republicans ruled that they will introduce a resolution that basically says they will be getting the documents in 30 days. This appears to be the current Trump tactic for anything that, you know, is not going well. Tariffs, for one, the tariff deadline keeps getting kicked into the grass, essentially kicked into the long grass. The same for the Epstein documents being released. So this isn't particularly the Epstein list. They've said that the Epstein list doesn't exist, but we'll go into that later on. So yeah, we will obviously discuss that in general. There has also been attacks on the media by Trump as well, individually, personally, as he has sued the Wall Street Journal and Rupert Murdoch for $10 billion about claims that were put in the Wall Street Journal of Trump's sending of a 50th birthday card to Jeffrey Epstein, which was basically a pervert letter with like one of his gross drawings of a girl that had her pubes were Trump's signature, and he said all kind of things like, "I've never done that. I've never drawn doodles," but there are loads of examples of his doodles everywhere, and it doesn't really matter anymore. It doesn't really matter what proof there is out there of anyone doing anything, because the people in power are just kind of saying whatever they want, and they're not accountable to anyone. So none of that stuff matters. Welcome to 1987 Animal Crossing, everyone. George Formby was right. And that's why there's a statue of him in Bolton. I might be wrong. Blackpool, don't quite know. Should know that. Lancashire heritage, but never mind. Anyway, yeah, it's crazy. You know, what we're talking about, the NPR, for example, is one of the organizations that gets funding from the federal government. It has a large history, a huge history, broadcasting Senate hearings on Vietnam War in the 70s. In the 80s, they were... no, forget that bit. Don't worry about that. We'll just have something else in there. They've essentially reported on a lot of stuff for a long time that is very, very important. They provide a lot of support to various different radio stations, like in schools and colleges all over the USA. and they are like a membership organization. Of course, it's not without bias. No one is saying that these public broadcasting services are without bias, but it is still important to have, some level of public broadcasting service, especially, as I was mentioning before, for the emergency services that are provided to people in rural states, especially with the ongoing climate crisis and the speeding up, the increase in consistency and frequency of climate disaster-based weather events in the USA. It's obviously, incredibly important, and this is just more and more of an example that this will continue to go under cautioned and just underfunded. People will lose their lives as a result of this, and it's absolutely gross. There is a bit more to this story as well. So Stephen Colbert, who is a late night talk show host for anyone who's not in the USA, if you haven't heard of him, basically he's, I don't know, who Jonathan Ross and Graham Norton all ripped off, when they made their shows, although there's loads of different late night talk show hosts. But this guy, Stephen Colbert, he made some comments about the funding cuts and about Trump. And apparently the broadcasting network has decided to cancel his show now after the next season. Particularly the comments that got his show cancelled were about the network's capitulations to Trump. So, yeah, very interesting stuff. Again, this is, this all began when Trump decided that he would only be letting approved journalists into the White House for press releases. And it is only going to continue to become more and more of a state-controlled media that is prevalent in the USA. There is just going to be like a lot of whipping that's going on, and there very well could end up being a completely official USA propaganda department very, very soon. We've already got Alligator Auschwitz. Me and Soph were talking about this a little bit this week when she came on my show. In fact, I think on my stream, I think we talked about it before the show actually, and you said, Soph, they're doing too much stuff too quick, and this wasn't like a criticism. This was like you being like, well, people are just gonna be like, what the fuck is happening, and just like start going crazy basically. And that
I've been saying since Trump 2 started that like the tech bros being involved with it is such a disaster for them, because Silicon Valley's favorite saying is move fast and break things. And electoral politics, the politics of the state doesn't work like that. Like it just, the whole thing is about artfully maneuvering the population into a place where their expectations match the bullshit that you're trying to pull on them. Yeah. And if you just go, hey, everyone, day 2, no Medicaid anymore. Doesn't exist. Also, concentration camps. You know what else? Police riots. Actually, we're funding the police more than they've ever been funded in history, but just specifically the ones who are the most fascist. We're making an SS. Okay, we're making an SS and concentration camps, no Medicaid, and the most obnoxious of any of the rich people, Elon Musk. Like the worst guy, you're going to be seeing him on TV every day, every single day, and he's going to be being more annoying. Okay, everyone cool? Like you can't move fast and break things when you're the president, actually.
Yeah, and this is reflected in things like ICE morale dropping just before the Big Beautiful Bill was passed. Obviously, the Big Beautiful Bill means that $175 billion is now going towards recruiting more people, training them. But, again, like how many people are you going to be able to feasibly continue to do this work with so much public pushback, with so much actual protest and direct action against ICE? How sustainable is it? And it just seems like it's going to be this again. Like I was talking this week on my stream as well about Israel and Syria, which we're going to talk about in a sec with Tim. But it's like, fascists are not really learning from the mistakes of fascist governments in the past where, you know, Hitler, for example, with about, I can't remember how many troops he had. So I always thought it was 9 million, but someone corrected me this week and said it was 4 million. Tried to invade like every country in Europe all at the same time. And like, surprise, surprise, couldn't meet the demands of the armies. Essential stuff like food, medical aid, etc., you know, marched into battle, were getting killed by the hundreds and thousands, and all of a sudden, you know, it collapsed in on itself, and that's how these things work. You know, there's no change with that kind of logistics. You know, it doesn't somehow magically not work in the same way because we're in, you know, 2025. So it's quite interesting in that regard. But that is the end of my analysis on that story and also the end of that story. We're going to speak more about the Epstein stuff after this. But why don't you finish off the news for us, Tim, by telling us about Israel and Syria?
Sure thing. So, I mean, there's been a lot going on there along there recently. I'll try to cover all the important stuff. But yeah, so we've obviously been seeing a lot of strikes. Like, I mean, there's people like I'm seeing reporting on this acting as if it has just recently kicked off, but Israel have been attacking Syria forever. You know, like it's been going back a long time. And then, you know, obviously there is like the recent stuff with Bashar al-Assad and, you know, like his they call it like dethroning or whatever. But just recently, Israel and Syria have agreed to a crucially a US brokered ceasefire after intense clashes in southern Syria, particularly in Sueda, where hundreds of people were killed. Turkey and Jordan are also coming in to support the deal. So, my brothers, the Druze citizens of Israel, the situation in Sueda and southeastern Syria is very serious. The principal architect of the 2018 nation-state law that's been widely criticized for marginalizing the Druze and other minorities said, guess what his name is? We are acting to save our Druze brothers and to eliminate the gangs of the regime, he assured them, referring to the Syrian government. So this is a statement from Benjamin Netanyahu, who is, yeah, as pointed out, has legislated against Druze in the past. Like the Druze are they're a unique kind of group. They're a super majority. There's like, I think it's like the same as Maori. There's like 1 million in the world, you know, but they're a group that were it was like an offshoot of Shia Islam and then another offshoot, and then we get the Druze where they're kind of like mixed in with a lot of like Gnosticism and stuff like that, and created their own kind of like it's like an ethnic and religious group that is very secretive. They keep to themselves. Like they have rule, like they don't follow the 5 pillars of Islam like a lot of other kind of Shia derivative groups, but they have their own thing going on. They're just going to keep to themselves, and so they've largely just stuck to that area in the Levant, like that have been there forever. There's not too many of them, but they are like, as far as Arab groups of kind of like different kinds of Arab groups go in Israel, like they're allowed to serve in the military there and all this kind of stuff that some other groups aren't and stuff. But they're still definitely not equal citizens, you know, like they're still a minority. And so Netanyahu has a history of being pretty shit to them. So does Israel in general. But all of a sudden, it's really important that that they cross the border to protect the Druze in Syria that they say are under persecution from the Syrian government, who it's like, you know, like who are being, so they're liberating the Druze in Syria by heavily bombing the areas with the most majority Druze people. You know,
I sincerely hope Israel never tries to liberate me.
Exactly. I mean,
between the hostages and now the Druze, I'm like, they have a really bad record with the people they try to
like,
liberate.
do they know what that word means? So yeah, Israel
It
bombed
means you
Syrian.
liberate parts of the body from each other and you
Yeah,
move them
yeah,
as
yeah.
far away from each other as possible.
So they bombed Syrian government targets, including the defense ministry and near the presidential palace, claiming it was protecting the Druze minority. Syrian forces and Bedouin tribes were also involved in sectarian fighting in the areas. So it's like, yeah, attacking the government and yeah, the presidential palace is a big one. So Syria's foreign ministry said the strikes targeted government institutions and civilian facilities in Damascus and Sueda and killed several innocent civilians. This flagrant assault, which forms part of a deliberate policy pursued by the Israeli entity to inflame tensions, spreads across and undermines security and stability in Syria, constitutes a blatant violation of the United Nations Charter and international humanitarian law, it added. So it's like, yeah, and it's a wild thing, especially when we look at the recent history, particularly in Syria, and like Israel's activities, like just constantly acting to destabilize the country. Like there's no other kind of there's no other real explanation for it. Netanyahu has framed Israel strikes as defending the Druze community, um, which so yeah, if you have a look at it, Sueda and Golan Heights on a map are like, they're like right on either sides of the borders from each other. So the community in Syria is like really tied to the Druze community in the occupied Golan Heights, which is like, yeah, like it's another area occupied by Israel, right? And so yeah, and there were like a lot of civilians killed in these bombings, and so the U.S. has spoken in favor of de-escalation, with Secretary of State Marco Rubio calling the situation horrifying, and Syria's government has welcomed international mediation. It's like, yeah, Marco Rubio going in there and saying, "Oh, this Israel bombing Syria is like horrifying," is like, it's like the "I think you should leave" skit where he's in like the big suit and he's like, "We're just trying to find the guy that's doing this," It's like, like, like
Who
this is
drove
horrifying.
that blue and white car with the Star of David in here?
Yeah,
Smashed
yeah,
the
yeah,
fucking
yeah.
windshield in.
Who gave them that big shipment of bombs? Like, where did they get those bombs from? Those bombs with like, like property of U.S. Department of Defense on the side. Like, um, so reports describe massacres, looting, and shortages of medical supplies in Sweden. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights reported over 350 dead, including civilians and fighters from both sides. Since the ousting of al-Assad after a 14-year war, Israel has struck Syria hundreds of times and invaded and occupied about 400 square kilometers of its territory. That's about 155 square miles, excluding the Western Golan Heights, which it has occupied since 1967. Interesting, right? So it's pure opportunism. Alon Pincus, a former Israeli ambassador and consul general in New York, told Al Jazeera. Of course, it's nice to pretend that we're helping our friends, the Druze, in the same way as we never helped our other friends, the Kurds, he said, referring to another regional ethnic group. This is basically like a history of the area. Pincus sketched out a number of the motivations behind Israel's recent strikes in Syria, from boosting Netanyahu's newfound self-image as a wartime leader, to pushing back his corruption trial, to reinforcing the delusion that over the previous 21 months, Israel has somehow managed to reshape the Middle East through military force alone. Lastly, he doesn't want to see a unified Syria with a strong central government controlled by al-Sharaa, Pincus says. He wants a weak central government dealing with areas controlled by the Kurds in the north and the Druze and Bedouin in the south. Basically, if Syria remains ununified, Israel can do what it wants in itself, he added. Netanyahu has repeatedly emphasized that Israel will only stand for a demilitarized Syria south of Damascus, including the region that encompasses Sueda. This, in effect, creates a buffer zone for Israel, adding to the military reasoning for Israel's action in Syria. So this conflict exposes how imperialist powers exploit ethnic divisions to destabilize nations while masking aggression as protection. Israel's bombing campaign, under the guise of defending minorities, reinforces its role as a regional enforcer of Western interests, while Syria's weakened state struggles against both internal fractures and foreign intervention. The Druze, like other minorities, are caught in a proxy war where their survival is politicized by all sides. True liberation requires dismantling imperious meddling and building working class solidarity across sectarian lines, which is not something that can be done in the current, let's say, the current controlled state of the area. It's like, it's the same thing as what they did in Palestine, where when there was actually any like proper left-wing working class group that were gaining power, instantly, like they are just taken out completely, and instead, like America and Israel come in with like supplies and training for right-wing militias. And I mean, this is like, this is the history of, what's happened there, what's happened with Kurds, what's happened in, like the East Turkestan separatists, all these kind of things. It's like, there's no, like, they profit from the instability. There's no long-term plan for peace. Like they want the area to be completely demilitarized so that they can just functionally just take it over and control everything south of
Absolutely.
Damascus.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
this very paternalistic attitude to any groups in the region where like we are going to step in and we are going to resolve your conflicts for you and then create like, I guess we're exiting Pax Americana now because like America has just given up on being world police because it's, too busy sucking all of the value out of the working class as they all die. But like Pax is Israeli, I guess, just like, or I mean, ultimately, Netanyahu's shown what he wants to do. Greater Israel, just like not even countries around being policed and mediated by Israel, just one big triangular Israel.
Yeah. And it's like, like I think these kind of things also highlight, like these borders that have been established at various points in history and all this kind of stuff, and how it's like, how we can see like the area, like, where Drew's settlement is, and how there's like a border right in the middle of it and things like that, and it's kind of like you can see how the kind of everything going back to like the Balfour Declaration and all this kind of stuff, like chalking up like where is Israel and where's Palestine and stuff. It affects everyone in the area. It's not just the Palestinian people and Israeli people, whatever like that. It's like this entire area is the home to so many different people and cultures, ethnic groups that all that, I mean, it's like historically this entire area was such a kind of like vibrant multicultural mix of all these different cultures and everything like that, and it's like slowly becoming homogenized by Israeli expansion. Even, I mean, this is a different conversation, but we could even say that like Jewish culture in general is being homogenized by Israel, like the
I think in the way Israel
elimination of
talks about Jews, it absolutely tries to
and different
what's it Ben Shapiro started calling Jews who don't support Israel ginos, Jew in name only, like that they weren't in some essential characteristic, they had lost their Jewishness.
And like the elimination of like different dialects and different kinds of like Yiddish and all these kind of things, just consolidating a very monocultural kind of idea of
well, the only
identity.
fun thing about that is that you can say absolutely anything you like about the IDF, Benjamin Netanyahu, pretty much any Zionist in Yiddish. They'll have no idea what you're talking about. They just don't speak it.
So
but you're right.
There's a lot going on. So that's what's happening in Israel and Syria, with Israel and Syria at the moment. We'll keep an eye on things as it develops. This whole thing is very like, we talked about it before, but it reminds me a lot of the border war, with South Africa and Zimbabwe and Namibia and all this kind of stuff, where it's like this nation just like lashing out at every port. And I think, I mean, that didn't go too well for them. So we'll see. There's a possibility that Israel just over leverages itself. And I think even even American conservatives are starting to get a little bit like, I think a little bit weird about, well, like starting to figure out that it's a little bit weird how they have to like swear fealty to this like foreign entity that is like taking all of their tax dollars and stuff.
Yeah.
So
In Texas, like that is extended to citizens in Texas. When they get like a job, they have to be
yeah,
like, yeah, nah, I will never criticize Israel. And it's like, what are you
yeah.
talking about? You
Taking
just live in
public office
Texas.
or even like
Yep.
working in schools and stuff. There's a lot of wild stuff. And I think it's like we saw the turn on Ukraine, and I think that we will see that on Israel at some point. I think there's like with Ukraine, it was easy for them just to kind of like, snip it off. But I think with Israel, there'll be a point where I don't think they can create like a break like that because they need it's so strategically important. But I do think that there might be a shift. We've seen such a shift in like now celebrities are allowed to talk about Palestine now, or some of them. So
Yeah,
yeah, we'll
I feel
see.
like there is a managed shift going on, and
Mm,
the hope is that Israel can become its own like self-sustaining obnoxious bullshit country that like
mm,
everyone hates, everyone despises in the whole fucking world,
yeah.
and it's being horrible to all of its neighbors, but also like it is able to hold enough power independently of the US, or like independently but under the table. We all understand that the US is still supporting it, like in a way where it will like they can reduce what they're doing
Mm,
slowly, rather than, I think that's what this all is like, is trying to maneuver Israel into a position where it stands on its own.
yeah. And I think that it's like I think that if Israel, like if it's kind of like I think of it as this, like there are all these supply lines that come out from all these other countries supporting Israel. It's like like America and the UK and all this kind of stuff. And as these like supply lines are gradually minimized or even like maybe even severed, I think we will see like a very quick shift in like the political landscape of the Middle East. um yeah, but we'll see about that. I can imagine a world where like I think and yeah, it's another thing we've talked about. Netanyahu and a couple of other guys being the scapegoats, loaded up with all the sins of, all the sins of the genocide and the Holocaust, all that kind of stuff, and then trialed and like punished in some way or whatever, and then they go back to having like cool liberal Israel or whatever, and they just kick the can down the road. Um, but yeah, I don't know. We'll see how it develops.
They're
I
going to
think that
start doing land acknowledgements,
yeah,
that they're on
yeah,
stolen land doing the thing they're doing.
yeah. Like I think like something like that might happen. There might be some major concessions, but things will continue. Like I mean, maybe we'll get like some kind of like restructured like Israel-Palestine borders and like a heavier American military presence to like manage the handover, and like things like that.
Yeah.
Like
And I mean, when we're
yeah,
saying this stuff will happen, I mean, I think this is maybe their vision for what will happen. But I don't see a way that, with Netanyahu locked so firmly into this and using the genocide as his grip on power, I don't think it's ending without a serious kind of collapse
yeah.
of a lot of Israeli power political structure.
But yeah, I also like, I mean, I just think like it's what they're doing now, like building these building like literally, like the concentration camps, and they've said like any any Palestinian person outside of these areas will be considered a terrorist, and is like, a target or whatever. I think that like that's the goal, right? To
Hmm.
get them back in the, like to create a new Gaza for all Palestinians, to have them in there, to have them managed, and then just, you know, take over the rest of Palestine. And then maybe gradually, like allow them to be like, like second class citizens or something within their own state once that
Yeah.
they have fully, they've fully, I guess, like developed and managed the infrastructure and created their new Israel or whatever.
Yeah.
Which is like, it's like completely fucked and horrific.
I think it says a lot that there was a clip that went round recently that really upset a lot of people, Zionists, so not really people. It was of the actor who plays Inigo Montoya in The Princess Bride. His name is Mandy something or other. I can't remember his surname. And he has always been a Zionist. He's always been a liberal Zionist. And there is a clip of him and another couple of Jewish liberal Zionists who are clearly, for them, the contradictions are getting too clear.
Yeah.
Like that you can see that they are visibly crying and emotional and upset about what is happening to Palestinians. Of course, they can't, break away from saying things like, I think Mandy says something like, this is doing harm to Israel, which is something that I deeply love. But, still, this is someone who is like
I
obviously...
can't believe Auschwitz has given people a negative impression of Nazi Germany. Like,
Exactly. And it's this kind of like, the contradictions are getting so overwhelmingly clear. Like there is no going back. And again, what we've spoken about before, the over policing of people who are holding signs to support a direct action group that should not be prescribed in the UK, the overwhelming imperial boomerang in the US. It is just all like the dying screams of an empire that does not want to let go. And this is the last chance saloon, really, for the Zionist entity. I think it's really showing just like how weak it is. And again, like, the consistent resistance operations, it's crazy. I think there were 200 resistance operations over like the last few months by the resistance in Gaza, which is like crazy. Like 200 is insane. And almost every single one of them has been successful. This is a guerrilla war fought by indigenous people in the land that they've lived in for decades, and they're spurred on by the fact that they've lost their loved ones and their families and stuff like that. And I think that it is just, it's becoming very obvious. You have various different kinds of fascists in Israeli society who are like, what's going on with Hamas? Why haven't you gotten rid of Hamas? Why is the government not getting rid of Hamas? Why can't they do this? Why can't the IDF do any of this? And then you see like all these images of like IDF soldiers who have died, and they're like 18-year-old Instagram models. And it's like, what the fuck is happening? Like, what is this fucking sick, fucked up country? It's just crazy. It's like, I'm not saying that they should like train them properly to do a genocide. I'm not. It's obviously on the other end of
there
things.
is a unique sickness to the IDF being so many like freshly conscribed 18-year-old teenagers. Like, it's really messed up.
And it feels like it's an overwhelming it's like an op, so that they can literally say whenever the resistance kills one of them, like, oh, they kill children, and it's like, well, nah, you conscript children, come on.
Yeah They killed our child soldiers. Yeah, you see them and they're just like, look at the special angel baby that died while bulldozing a fucking Palestinian family's home, and the roof fell in on them. Like, yeah, fuck,
Jesus Christ,
like, score one for the house.
Lol.
But yeah,
well, it's been a pretty grim news week, but I think that is all we have to talk about today. And we'll hopefully have some organizing wins and positive stuff to chat to you about next week. But this has been Red Planet. I want to remind everyone that Red Planet is a show made possible by our Patreon supporters over at patreon.com/red_planet. There are various different tiers you can support us at that do various different things. You can read them all on the page and see all the different rewards you could get. But I'd rather tell you about the more general project of Red Planet, which is for us to bring a revolutionary anti-imperialist lens to like world events and what's going on, and give this analysis, and also to interview activists and organizers about what's happening as the American empire collapses and how we build something that can survive it, and hopefully provide people a way through into a better world. That's what we're all about. We have a documentary that we are, is currently in the editing stage about the ZAD, the Zone à défendre de la Notre-Dame de Londres, which you can look up and read a little bit about on Wikipedia, but you will be able to see all about if you give us money on Patreon, because that will fund the documentary actually getting finished. So again, it's patreon.com/red_planet. Yeah, we would love to produce more documentary content in future as well, but this one will only get finished and future stuff will only get funded if we have Patreon support. Again, there are loads of different tiers to choose from with different rewards, but at the highest tier, which is our sicko tier, we give a personal thank you to our sickos at the end of every episode. So thank you, Risk Inverse, being our sicko tier supporter.
Thank you.
That's the show. But Mule, where can people find more of you? You've got back to streaming recently.
Yeah, I'm streaming again. So every Monday to Thursday, head over to twitch.tv/DJ Mule at 7 p.m. UK time. Cover all kinds of things and tend to have a bit of a laugh watching Brain Rot nowadays because it is, of course, dead funny. Trying to figure out the way that the right wing's sort of content creation is evolving, and the ways in which that they're trying to desperately not say that they're fascists, but that kind of is changing at the moment. But anyway, regardless, we tend to have a look at like Landlord Brain Rot and of course a little bit of Rumble Brain Rot. If you don't know Rumble, it's basically like the YouTube for far-right fascists who've just been banned off YouTube for various things like sex crimes. Russell Brand's on there, for example, and sometimes I'll react to him reacting to the Epstein list not being published, and that's fucking ironic, isn't it? Anyway, so yeah, you can check that out. I also have a new YouTube channel that is doing okay, and I think people are enjoying it. So head over to that and check that out. That's Mule Twitch clips on YouTube. You can check all of my links out at my Linktree, which is linktree.ee/DJ MUEL. And yeah, I've got a new video coming out very soon. I've talked about it on the show already, but it got kind of kicked down the road with organizing and being ill and stuff like that. But now I've got my health back and I'm not organizing and I'm making content full time. I will be writing this and sorting it out. It's Bastard Landlord Influencers 2. And I've already got as well Bastard Landlord Influencers 3 in the works. So this is going to be an actual series, as I said it was going to be, about a year and a half ago now. So yeah, you can look forward to that. Check out all of that on my Patreon. And please consider supporting me on my Patreon. I got loads of extra bonus content on there. I've started writing stuff on my Patreon now. So doing sort of like not really articles. You can't really call them articles because they're not published, but doing little news reports and sort of opinion pieces on the current state of things and stuff. So you can get access to them for as little as £2 a month and a bunch of other content as well. So please consider supporting me. And talking about supporting people, how can we support Tim?
So you can find me on Twitch or YouTube as Conquest of Dread, or over on Twitter as Dread Conquest, or in Blue Sky, same thing, Dread Conquest. Yeah, I don't stream too much outside of Red Planet stuff these days, but yeah, you can find me there. What else? Oh yeah, and I've been working on a book, a tabletop RPG. If you're into that kind of stuff, you can find it. I linked to it on my Twitter, but you can also find it by going to Twitter at DarkRPG2000. It's very close to being done, just like playtesting stuff. But yeah, it's kind of rad. It's like, I don't know, dark future dystopian vibes. Cool. And what about Soph? Where can we find more about Soph?
You can find all my links at linktree.ee/Sophie from Mars, but most importantly, I'd urge you to go to patreon.com/Sophie from Mars, where I have an essay up. As I said, it's about trans organizing. It's called "They Said on TV That You Aren't a Person Anymore." There's an analysis of the situation we're in. But then much more importantly, because I'm fucking sick of takes. I'm so sick of takes and people just having a take, and that's the only thing. It is my actual proactive suggestions for what organizing we need to do to actually liberate ourselves. that is available in text form. It will be up as a video on my Patreon for $2 plus patrons in a couple weeks, and then up on my YouTube a couple weeks after that. I want to finish this piece about Israel first. So I've got this sort of twin shorter theory projects, theory and organizing stuff going on. I was spurred on by a very bad take by, I don't need to say to a lot of people who it was, about Israel recently. And I was like, I don't need to write about Israel for a really long time because I've already said we got to do direct action to stop the genocide. And I said that, and we must stop them. And I come on Red Planet every week and I talk about Israel, and we talk about how much we have to stop the genocide. And then I saw a take that was very liberal and based on a very middle class perspective and quite doomerist as well. You know, there is nothing to be done. And I was like, oh, actually, there are people who would benefit from me telling them you are so wrong. So I guess I'm still doing takes, but it's about that one's about Israel, and it's also still about how there is stuff to be done, which I guess is the underpinning thing in all our content, Red Planet and our streams and everything is there is stuff to be done, and we got to do it. Someone's read a book about what stuff's to be done. If you still haven't seen my video about the Mars trilogy by Kim Stanley Robinson, it's up on my YouTube video, up on my YouTube channel now, Sophie from Mars. It's called Shikata Ganai, an analysis of the Mars trilogy by Kim Stanley Robinson. And it's the prettiest video I've ever made, and it's lovely, and it's just chill, nice time talking about utopia and space and communism. And I've partly done that because my next big theory project, The Mad and the Mentally Ill, is going to be fucking torturous, and is going to be about so much suffering and pain and misery that I really needed to do some chill, nice stuff about space. So check that out. Go to my Patreon if you want to see these theory projects about Israel, about trans people early. And The Mad and the Mentally Ill, my next big theory essay, will be there too. Patreon.com/Sophie from Mars when it's done. Well, that's all. So I guess we'll see you next week. We've got a guest on to talk about how it feels being in America right now. Hey, bye.
Terrible. Spoiler.
Bad. Spoilers.